I want to welcome everyone to regularly scheduled City Council meeting for July 6, 2021. We'll start with our invocation by Lori Beth Sussman of the Gulf Coast Jewish Community. If you would come forward.
Good evening. I'm honored to be delivering this prayer today, so soon after the inauguration of the mayor and the City Council, and just days after our country celebrated its birthday. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, bless this country and all who dwell within it. Help us to experience the blessing of our lives and circumstances, to be vigilant, compassionate, and brave. Strengthen us when we are afraid. Help us to channel our irritation so that it motivates us to action. Help us to be humble in our fear, knowing that as vulnerable as we may feel, there are those at greater need, and that it is our holy work to stand with them. Help us to taste the sweetness of liberty, to not take for granted the freedoms won by generations past. Watch over our armed forces and all those entrusted with our safety as they daily put their lives at risk to protect us and those freedoms. Creator and protector of all, at this Biloxi City Council meeting, we ask that the mayor, the City Council men and women, and all who serve the public be guided with righteousness, that they may use their influence and authority to speak truth and act for justice. Provide them with insight to do what is right in your eyes. May these men and women and others who do your work be filled with love and kindness, and bless them that they may walk with integrity on the path of peace. May we create a world that reflects your glory, remembering the charge of the prophet Micah. For what does God demand of you but to act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And if the Camp Wilkes Troop 212 would come forward, they're going to lead us in the pledge.
Please stand. Absolute. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I need a motion to suspend the rules. Second. First by Mr. Lawrence, a second by Mr. Tisdale.
The consent agenda will remove an item 5L, resolution to amend the Parks and Recreation budget. Oh. It is.
Okay, it is.
Yeah. Resolution to amend the Parks and Recreation budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021 to purchase a pitching machine for the A.J. Holloway Sports Complex.
I move as amended.
All right. I'll second that. All right. All in favor? 7-0. All right, we'll now move to the presentation agenda. Mayor Gillich.
Pardon me. No, thank you, Mr. President, and welcome everyone to the next 4 years, both the council and administration. It's great to have. We started with a great prayer and, of course, the pledge. So with that, we're off and running. Before I forget, I want to ask you to spread the minutes of expenses of the Biloxi travel credit card. So that's done. Again, it's exciting to have everyone here, and I'm sure we've got a stack of business to take care of. But I would like to ask Joe Bowden to come in, and he has a statement to make. Joe?
Thank you, Mayor. Everybody wants to know the story, so here's the true story. Joe Boney was a little boy growing up in 1960 who ran and stood at the fence in front of his home at 306 Raynor Street every time a fire truck came screaming by from Back Bay Fire Station. With great pride, he would tell his siblings, "That's what I'm going to be one day." When that boy became a man, he realized his dream. On May 10th, 1984, the first day of his employment with the Biloxi Fire Department. For years, he would scream down the streets of Biloxi on the tailboard of the fire truck. He got to see and do so many extraordinary things. Some were so horrific that no human being should ever have to experience it. And some were so absolutely miraculous that every human being should have experience of witnessing. For over 38 years, he not only lived his dream, he lived it big. He achieved what only 1% of firefighters at the Biloxi Fire Department have accomplished, and that is to be privileged to serve as chief of the department. He lived an unimaginable dream filled with excitement, passion, hard work, dedication, and perseverance, making a positive difference in the department and the city he so dearly loves. And now we come to the end of the story. And that little boy and the man still refuses to let someone else write his ending. I wrote my ending to this story earlier this afternoon when I submitted my letter of intent to retire from the city of Biloxi to the mayor, which will become effective no later than the end of the year, in order to allow an adequate time for a smooth transition. So while this may be the ending to this particular story, the little boy in me still looks forward to other dreams to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. And with that, I think that concludes my report.
All right, we'll now move, do we have any departmental reports? All right, we'll now move to the council reports. Mr. Lawrence?
When I was a little boy, they had horse and buggy pulling them fire trucks, and there wasn't any cars in that. Joe lived in a fine world. Get him up, get him up. Had a great weekend with the fireworks, great display, shot up by the Boom Boom Committee. They did a great job once again for the city. And when you think about what's happening in the world today, United States, in the state, we're lucky to be living in Biloxi, Mississippi, inside the United States of America. We still free people, we're free thinkers, and there's a lot of things, like you said, to be done in the city coming up, that budget time, looking at all the finances, seeing what we can do for raises, taking care of anybody we can take care of. There's a lot of work yet to be done. But those people that gave those lives for us to be able to do this, we need to thank them. So I'm thanking them. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Guines?
Right, thank you. Thank you, President.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Thank you again. First of all, this is the first day of a new start for 4 years. I want to thank everyone that was involved in setting up the inauguration. I want to thank all the ladies for their hard work. My thoughts are coming into these next 4 years is to look at our employees and to look at possibly a raise for all of them. So that's kind of on the back burner for me. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Newman?
We just leave it.
Mr. Deming?
I don't have much of a report. I just want to thank everyone here again for allowing us to do this for another 8 years. And while we've had a lot of problems in the past 2 years, I look forward to working with the mayor and creatively solving our budget issues after COVID. And lastly, George, you're not fooling anybody. They did not invent fire when you were a child. Never mind, it was just a joke on, can't hear it, then I can't make it funny. Nothing else.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's a tough room to work, isn't it, Councilman?
Mr. Tisdale?
Crashed and burned.
Yeah, a couple of things. I assume everybody's had a chance to look at and study the proposed budget workshop calendar. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that or those dates. They're all Tuesdays, and in the past, we've either met, if it was a night meeting, the afternoon prior to the night meeting, or if it was an afternoon workshop, usually in the morning. And second and fifth Tuesdays, pretty much, we don't have regularly scheduled meetings. I mean, I'd like to go ahead and nail down these dates if we could, if everybody's good with those.
I'm good with them. I think we communicated via email. I want to lock down the time as well so I can
Right.
calendar it.
So if we have just a minute, if it,
Yeah,
that's good. Okay, Tuesday, the 13th, that's next Tuesday, we're looking at a council workshop on revenue projection. That's an afternoon meeting at 1:30. We can meet that morning, 10:30, 11 o'clock. George? Workshop next Tuesday, budget revenue, what time? 11, 10:30?
Okay.
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, is that good with everybody? 7 a.m., 7? No, not 7 a.m., he's just getting in then.
That's in the morning you're talking about?
Yeah, thank you. So we can look at July 13th, next Tuesday at 11 o'clock, that'll be on revenue projections. And the following Tuesday after that is the 20th, again, that's a 1:30 meeting. Department budgets, police, fire, community development, administration, executive, legislative. 11 o'clock that day work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, 11 o'clock it is. On the 27th, we've got a 1:30.
When's MML?
MML is going to be the 27th, which is a Tuesday. We meet at 1:30, but MML is in town that week. Do you want to stay away?
I would.
Yeah, let's stay away. Okay, so the 27th, Mike, is not a good date. We've got the MML conference down here. So that means we'd look to August 3rd, which is a night meeting. The council workshop would deal with departmental budgets, public works, engineering, parks, and the ports and harbors. That would be at what time in the afternoon? 4 o'clock? Does that work for everybody? That's a night meeting. So August 3rd at 4 o'clock. And August 10th, the second Tuesday of the month, we don't have a meeting scheduled. We could review the tax levy, talk about any odds and ends, maybe whatever projects you all might be interested in. We just set that date as, what time, 11 o'clock. We don't have a council meeting at all that day. Yeah, that day. We could do it at 11 o'clock, or we could do it at 2 o'clock for that matter. Anybody have any preference? Otherwise, I'll keep it at 11. All right, and topics to be determined later, and if we've covered everything, we may not even find that meeting necessary. Okay, that's good. Mike, I'll get with you on the dates just to double check, and we'll get that out to everybody. Also, I'd have a request that the Police Chief Miller and Attorney Abide, I'd mentioned this last week, to begin looking at the noise or amplified sound ordinance. I know there are some issues in terms of enforceability, and if we could resolve those. I know with scraping the coast, if you live south of the railroad tracks, your windows were rattling in West Biloxi from all the bass turned up, and I mean, I could hear noise, and I'm on the north side of the tracks, but anyway, if we could look at that, it might make it a little easier to enforce it, I think, for the police department, and let our residents have a little more peace than they currently have. Also, I'd like to echo Councilman Gines and thank those people who were responsible for the inauguration. It was a good job, nice event, and I look forward to working with the mayor, administration, and my council colleagues up here for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glavin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I got a few things on the agenda, and I want to make a comment on Joe Boney's comments that he made earlier. But first, I want to thank Michelle and the council clerk's office for organizing our areas up here. This is as organized as I've seen it. Y'all can't see it on this end, but she, put some pencils and pens and pads and everything to keep us in ship shape up here, and I thank y'all for that. I do have a file that was dropped off by a concerned citizen in Taylor Oaks regarding the speed table that we recently put to deter speeding. I'd like to give that to our chief deputy clerk just to distribute. If you can put it in everybody's box, I think there's enough for the mayor's office as well. They've just asked to take a second look at that speed table to see if it can be modified at all. So I'll submit that. Next, I just want to remind the administration, I do have a request in for Seymour Engineering to come give a report on SAVs and dredging projects and timetables. If we can just make sure that we keep that on the radar and get that done as whenever we can. So that brings me to Chief Boney's, I guess his, that's a very emotional presentation he gave us about his career. I've read the articles in the newspaper and the media recently, and I don't know if this body up here needs to act as judge, jury, and executioner on items like this. We need to hear all sides. Every one of us has been the topic of scrutiny in one way or the other, whether it's past, present, or some kind of encounterment. That our actions, we're open to that when we serve the public, but it's only fair to hear all sides, and I hope we pause and take time to do that. Judge Joe Boney has had a long and career with the city of Biloxi, 37 years, and we currently enjoy the best fire rating in the state of Mississippi, 2 new fire stations. And over and over and over, I've heard every one of the council members at these meetings, at these proceedings, applaud Joe Boney and other directors for a job well done. And it's not hard, it is hard in a position of leadership to run any of these departments. We're in a part-time position up here. You're in a full-time position for 37 years, and all the directors that run those departments with, hundreds of employees. And so my hats are off to your accomplishments. As far as the rumors and innuendos, there's a process to take care of that. If there's any improprieties, I'd like to see the facts and a finding by somebody that there's some wrongdoing. And until that comes to light, I can't see standing in the way of the mayor's recommendation. At the inauguration, he proudly proclaimed that he has signed every single resolution that this council has presented to him, and not once has he used his veto power in doing that. And we've accomplished so much together. We've been elected unanimously, every one of the council members, to serve again. And our directors that have assisted us, which we all talked about at our inauguration, how we couldn't do it without them, that we're nobody without you guys. It's something, that I take very seriously. And that's all I have to say right now about the situation. Thank you, Chief Boney.
Thank you, Mr. Glavin. I have no report really. I just would like to say I look forward to working with the administration, Mayor Gillich, the administration, and council members for the next 4 years, and I want to thank my constituents for allowing me to serve for another 4 years. I don't know who elected Robert because he said he has 8 years, the next 8 years, but they only elected me for 4, so. That concludes my report. We'll now move to our citizen comments. We'll have a total allotted time of 45 minutes. If you would like to speak when you come forward, we'll need you to please sign in at the table as well as state your name and address for the record. And we'll start on my left side, your right side. My left side, your right side. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Please come forward. Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My name's John Higgins. I have have for you today a copy of the public information request I filed last week. Since I understand you have budget workshops this month, you as a city councilman should have this information. So after I get the answers, I will pass it on the information to you. But you should also ask for this information so you can be informed. Some representatives of the elected representatives of Biloxi you serve. I understand that you and the city council cannot get information unless it permits to a budget approval or the mayor's appointed staff. And I understand further that you, the city council, have been kept in the dark about this infrastructure project. And only the mayor and the city attorney, the manager, and Walt Road, program manager for this infrastructure project, have knowledge of any of the details. You should know the truth about the city-funded process of sending homeowners on a wild goose chase while you pay Associated Adjusters International to represent you in this game. A stall tactic game that the city of Biloxi is using to deflect all these poor people away from the city. It is fundamental and misleading to the residents, telling them an adjuster will come out, take pictures, and do the report to get their homes fixed when the list is given back to Oscar Aranda. And that my neighbors had their power knocked out and roof damage to Oscar Aranda by Oscar Aranda's Traco during this stormwater project on Clarence. Oscar Aranda should have fixed the damages by the neighbors, but my neighbors were put on a list and are waiting 5 years later. It appears a deeper investigation needs to be conducted by FEMA since they funded this infrastructure project. I don't think they would approve of the game being played at their expense. Councilman Ward 1 and Councilman Ward 2. I know a bunch of people that have been to y'all, and y'all ain't done nothing for them. Now, y'all need to get on top of all y'all's people and have them come here and show the council and the mayor that these people have all these problems. And some of them are 7 years old. Some of them are just now filled it out. Someone came and saw the mayor 4 months ago on 4th Avenue, and the mayor had it fixed and had their house done. Well, this whole thing is crazy. You're gonna take all this money from FEMA and give it back to Oscar Aranda to decide who, what, when, where, and
Your
how?
time is up.
That's all right. I'll be back next week. I mean, sooner or later, believe me, I worked for Mr. Bridges for a long time. I know a lot of people.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on my left side of the room? Mr. Hengen, come forward.
I'm Wayne Hengen. I'm an attorney in Biloxi. My offices are at 979 Howard Avenue. I represent Charlie Harmon, his wife, and some 20-plus other people who are objecting to the application of Majestic Oaks to enter into the short-term rental business. I have a petition by those folks. Some of them may be here, most of them probably not. I know Charlie's here and his wife. I will present that to you when I finish my remarks, but I did ask for a public hearing, and y'all might consider that, and it would be helpful to develop some of these issues in a little bit longer period of time than I have now. But in the event that's not granted, I would offer these considerations. The purpose of zoning is to protect residences, period. Short-term rentals are prohibited at Majestic Oaks right now. Thus, they have to apply for permission. Majestic Oaks is adjacent to a well-established residential neighborhood. There are no short-term rentals in and around Majestic Oaks or this neighborhood, which primarily is James Buchanan. They're adjacent neighbors. Granting this application would put a foot through the door and create a precedent that y'all will have to continually deal with. Majestic Oaks may be okay now as a quasi-neighbor, but that's because they have people with six-figure RVs driving into the park and staying for months at a time, not somebody coming onto the property, staying in a building on the property and staying for a night or two. There's a big difference. Short-term rentals are like a one-room motel, checking in and checking out. That's not really suitable for a residential neighborhood where people have lived there for 10 years or 30 years or even 50 years. But here's the most important thing. Majestic Oaks violated your law. Majestic Oaks was in the short-term rental business without your permission. Why would the city reward that? Why? Why would it set that precedent to be dealt with so that other people can do the same thing? Why would it not consider the message it is sending by that? You can deny it. I'd like to see you deny it for years so that this doesn't take a toehold and ruin a residential neighborhood and be a precedent for other ruinations. Please keep the purpose of zoning in mind. It's for the protection, not of business, but of where we sleep. It's not allowed now. Don't invite them in. And don't encourage violators of your own law to come in asking for forgiveness instead of in the beginning applying for
Your
permission.
time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on my left side, your right side, that would like to speak? Okay, please come forward. If you will, please sign in and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Leela Jordan. I also have some comments I'd like to give to the City Council after I speak. Thank you. I am speaking on behalf of several neighbors in Ward 1 concerning the claims they have made repeatedly for damages caused by Oscar Renda and their subcontractors during the FEMA-funded infrastructure repair program. I was present when Mr. Higgins met with the city engineering staff in front of his home because of the change in street elevation and the sidewalk no longer being ADA compliant, where Mr. Higgins had fallen repeatedly. He was told that the problems would be resolved, but to this date, it has not. I must remind the council that in January 2002, there was a settlement case, Department of Justice versus the City of Biloxi, where the settlement demanded that the City of Biloxi ensure that current structures as well as future projects meet ADA guidelines. It appears this directive is not being met. Mr. Higgins was also told by city staff he should see Craig Ross in Public Works to get on the house repair list because of damages to his home from this project. Mr. Higgins did this, and the City of Biloxi sent Courtney Martin from Associated Adjusters to file a claim. But Mr. Martin later admitted that he sends a list of homeowners with damage claims over to Oscar Renda, who did the damages in the first place, and now gets to decide what to do with the list. Mr. Martin also admitted he gets no status reports, no updates, there are no timelines, no deadlines. The homeowner never gets a follow-up report. There is nothing to hold Oscar Renda accountable. And I understand they've been deobligated from the City of Biloxi. I read in the contract between the City of Biloxi and Associated Adjusters International that the city has already given Associated Adjusters the authority to settle cases up to $5,000 without further approval. I understand you, the City Council, have budget workshops starting this month. Now is the time, as City Councilman, for you to obtain a departmental report on this matter. How much money has been paid to Associated Adjusters to handle these claims? What have they done for the money? How many people's homes who have filed for claims have been repaired? Or how many of these homeowners have received money to make their own repairs? Homeowners throughout Ward 1 and Ward 2 have been on claims lists for 6 years. Therefore, it is false and misleading to instruct residents that another adjuster is coming to process yet another claim, when that claim is given right back to Oscar Renda. I spoke to one of my senior friends, Mrs. Kotalski, who I also gave her name to Craig Ross so she could get help with her damages. This was before I found out the process was just a game. Because, again, Associated Adjusters came to her home, went through the motions, but as of 2 days ago, Mrs. Kotalski still has not heard of anything. This infrastructure project has been paid for utilizing FEMA funds, which were acquired after Hurricane Katrina. Isn't it ironic that first these homeowners suffered terrible damages to their home, and now they're suffering terrible damages again? I don't think FEMA would approve of how their money is being spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Pass them down if you'd like. I can pass them down if you just want to give me the stack. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else on my left? Let's come forward. If you will, please sign in, state your name and address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Doomer. I'm an attorney here in Biloxi. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Jason Rossetti, in particular as to items C and D of your policy agenda. I wanted to comment a little bit that while the esteemed Mr. Hengen said that zoning is to protect people, I would slightly disagree. I think zoning is to improve our communities, whether it's protecting the people or whether or not it's improving business or bringing people to see our Gulf Coast. Now, in particular, Dr. Rossetti had applied for originally a limited business designation. And what I've handed out to you all is a slight modification that after we looked at it, what it really should be is an RM20 or an RM10 special use designation for a bed and breakfast. You'll see the historical notes on there that Dr. Rossetti purchased and improved Stiglitz Landing, which I didn't even know this, went back to the 1800s. It was the generation of the word wool market was because of Stiglitz Landing. And according to the LDO for Biloxi, the whole purpose of a bed and breakfast is to build up and illustrate our historical buildings and allow both residents and tourists to see the rich history that we have here. And Dr. Rossetti, you'll note, if you're looking in the notes, really only had 2 neighbors who said they opposed it. I've included on there a petition that was not included at the earlier planning commission that has 14 of the neighbors that are around him and includes some of the names that the opposition party said were opposed to it. The neighbors are not opposed to this at all. And in fact, this very property had a bed and breakfast designation from the city of Biloxi in 2004 and 2005. Dr. Rossetti would simply like to open that beautiful estate to allow both residents and tourists to use it for its intended purpose so he can illustrate the beauty of Biloxi. Now, one of the things that I know if I was you, I'd wonder about, well, what's the difference between a short-term rental versus a bed in Biloxi? And the city's LDO has been pretty clear about that. If you approve a limited use or preferred use for a bed and breakfast, the city retains an exceptional amount of oversight that they can exact to ensure that Stiglitz Landing complies with all your code. In short, there has to be a full-time person on site to make sure that parking is controlled, noise is controlled, and those were the two issues that the opposing neighbors said they had. In your booklets, I put in there a parking plan that Dr. Rossetti plans to enforce to ensure that parking is not on the roads anymore. And the one neighbor who was opposed to this, if you look in there, I put an aerial diagram showing that that neighbor is about 300 feet away in dense trees. With an on-site person and all of the additional LDO requirements, the city of Biloxi can prevent short-term rentals. This will not open the door or put your foot or toe in to allow an expansion of short-term rentals. Approving this for a bed and
Mr.
breakfast
Dummer, your time is up.
is a win-win for Biloxi and allows tourism and residents to use this beautiful location.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on my left side and your right side that would like to speak? Please come forward. Thank you. Doing good. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and all. My name is Marcus Thomas, and I represent Majestic Oaks RV Resort. We're located on 1750 Pass Road, and we're 102 luxury RV sites. We are zoned NB and have been in business for 15 years. We have offered daily, weekly, and monthly rentals with no issues. We have over 43,800 visitors a year. Not monthly, but nightly visitors, of which some actually take residence in Biloxi and on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We're actually just recently voted #1 in resort in Mississippi by Mississippi Magazine. To add to recognitions Majestic Oaks has achieved over the past 15 years, I only say this for everyone to understand the pride and the commitment we have to this property and Biloxi. In late 2019, we went through the process to expand Majestic Oaks by 6 sites in the rear of the property, and with intentions of added cottages to test the growing trend in the RV space. We have had no complaints on the spots or cottages to date. We manage the property very well. We're very detailed on it. If y'all have been there, we take a lot of pride in it. We were operating outside the guidelines, and that is my fault because I thought we were already a daily, weekly, and monthly business. So I ran to City Hall and filled out the paperwork, hence this is why we are here. If you look at the map I gave you, Majestic Oaks is surrounded by many different businesses. Majestic Oaks only has one residential home that touches its property, but there is a 125-foot retention ditch that we maintain from that property. So there's quite a bit of space. Then we have the storage units and many other businesses going to the east and the west, as y'all know. We believe the cottages should stay and be allowed to operate already as a nightly, weekly, and monthly spot. We're already doing it. We've had no complaints. Our property, we work hard. We're a great neighbor to the Curry Subdivision. The cottages are in line with a business model that we're already practicing for 15 years, which is daily, weekly, and monthly. We have been doing this for 15 years, and I don't think there's any complaints as anybody has said to us. We're pretty much keep a low profile over there. I would thank you for your time, and we really want you to consider supporting us.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else on my left, your right, that would like to speak? My left, your right. Anyone on my right and your left that would like to speak? My right and your left. Is there anyone in the back of the room that would like to speak? All right. If not, this case is closed, or the citizens' comments are closed. Oh, we got one? All right. Please sign in and state your name.
Cynthia White and Willie Williams.
Okay, we're here on the behalf of code violation. And, excuse me, violations are, we had trash around the house, abandoned vehicles, also, mildew on the house, which have been corrected. They still come out and took pictures and also told us that we can only have one lawnmower, one blower, and an edger. Now, we're not here to violate any of the rules, but I don't think anyone should come and look over your fence and tell you how to live. I mean, you're grown, got children. I worked here at the city. I know a few people, Mayor, but I worked at the city off and on 36 years here. And my living is, from now, is to grab a little scrap. I don't pile it up high as the sky to try to make a living, but do feed the dogs, feed me, and keep a roof over our head. This is my landlord. I got her in trouble by the code coming out, looking over the fence, and I asked him, I said, well, what's the problem? He said, oh, we got a complaint. Why are you complaining over my fence? I mean, I could be out there sunbathing and whatever I want to do in the backyard. Why you got to look over my fence and then complain? And I clean it up. I got it loaded on my trailer at the house, and we're getting ready to do a complete cleanup. That needs more time and code environment to stop coming by saying that they had a complaint. We don't bother people unless we have a complaint. Ain't right. If I see you, you'll say, hey, neighbor, clean your yard up. Get a little help. People come in and help you. Nowadays, they want to come in, find you, and kick you to the curb and say, that's the end of it. I don't roll over like that. I respect this woman. I respect her property. I respect all of y'all. Oh, gonna have to ease up and stop putting pressure.
Mr. Williams, your time is up.
Okay, especially if you just taxpayers.
And we'll cover this during code violations as well at the end of the agenda. That'll be covered, so if you want to stay around for that, and if you have anything else to say, you can speak then.
Got some more important things to do.
Okay.
Surgery and stuff.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, any other citizen comments on either side of the room or in the back? Okay, come forward. Please sign in and state your name.
My name is Derek Gates. I'm president of the local firefighter association. I was just wanting to formally introduce myself to all of you, and I look forward to working with all of y'all this coming term. Before the meeting started, Councilman Glavin assisted me in putting a packet in front of each one of y'all. And I gave Mr. Leonard a packet, I guess about a week ago, to discuss with you. We're discussing the longevity and how we would like to move forward. But I would like to discuss with each of y'all individually in the future, before the budget ends, on how we might could go about it. I appreciate all of y'all's time, and I look forward to meeting with y'all. Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. You can come forward. You can go.
Good evening. My name is Mary Harmon. I live at 1751 James Buchanan Drive and have lived there for 20 years. I share the property line with Majestic Oaks, and I wanted you to know that they have been good neighbors for 15 years. However, recently they have made some decisions that affect our privacy. One of them is the dog run that they installed the entire length of our property. And beyond that is a ditch, and then beyond that is where they're placing their cottages. And I just feel that the cottages are going to be more of the beautiful RV park, but more of a hotel-like environment. And I'm here today to ask for your help to protect our privacy and also our property value. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? All right, please sign in and state your name and address.
My name's Charlie Harmon. I also live at 1751 James Buchanan Drive here in Biloxi. I don't care much for short-term rentals, just to begin with. I suppose they have a place, condos, things of that nature. It's almost why you buy them. But in a residential area, which this park is right in the middle of a residential area, yes, our property is right on the back of it. Quite frankly, they have not been a good neighbor. They are not the original developer of this RV park. They picked it up sometime over the last few years. The original developer, we were good neighbors, never had a problem. I wish I could say that now. As property owners and taxpayers, we have a certain right to quiet enjoyment of our property. That's not been happening. Not just with the dog run my wife has talked about, but the normal noise you will hear from a park like this. Not awful, but it does exist. I believe that these other 2 units, or 3, or whatever they want to do, where they are at this time, is going to create an even bigger problem for us. When we were in planning a couple weeks ago, they came up with a recommendation about moving from where they are into middle of the park to the front of the park, more on the side of a commercial storage unit, not so much on the other 2 sides where the other residents are. I believe this conditional use bad precedent and recommend it be denied. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, there's no one else. Citizens' comments are now closed. We will now move to the policy agenda. And do I have a motion and a second to go into executive session?
So moved. I'll second that.
All right, we have a council member Glavin moved and council member Tisdale seconded that the council go into a closed session for the purpose of examining the necessity to go into an executive session to discuss. All in favor? All opposed? 6-1. To discuss personnel issues. All in favor? 6-1 with Mr. Deming opposed. I now need a motion and a second that the council conclude the closed session and reconvene as an open meeting.
So moved. Second.
We have a first by Mr. Glavin, a second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? 6-1 with Mr. Deming opposed. And I now need a first and a second that the council go into an executive session.
So moved. I'll second that.
We have a first by Mr. Glavin, second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? All opposed? 6-1, Mr. Deming opposed.
Stand right there, turn around. Hands out of your pocket. All right, gentlemen, up there, please, hands out of your pockets, please, sir. Come together. Alex, come together. Together, son, thank you. Hands out of your pockets, stand up straight, feet together.
Proof they were here.
Take it off.
There you go. Come on, big smile.
Now you can put it back on, please, sir. Ready?
good run here. It's been a great 37 years. I've discussed it with the mayor. Decided this was my best course of action. I feel like it's time for me to move on. If I do not, if the council doesn't have, some of the council, not all the council, don't have faith in me, I don't want to be where I'm not. I don't have that faith. I have to work. I have to have it personally.
And that's exactly what my next question was gonna be. After hearing the rumors, you know, of course, your next step of action was this letter. How did you plan that? How did you decide to make that decision?
A lot of deliberation, talking with my family. We chose this as the best action for me. I'm ready to move on. You know, I talked to the mayor earlier in the year about my retirement, ending retirement, anticipated retiring in a year and 12 months. This situation tonight just is prompting me to accelerate it a little. And I'm very comfortable with my decision. I'm very honored to have been able to serve the city.
Talk to me about how the other firemen and the men you work with, men and women, how have they reacted to this?
Well, I haven't really discussed it with the firefighters. I've discussed it with my people, and they're just flabbergasted as to hear.
And you said you have your next plan, you have more things that you want to do. What does that include?
Well, spending more time at the fire museum, doing relief efforts after disasters. I want to put some more time in it. We've just formed a nonprofit corporation with the fire department out of Iowa called First Responders First. I intend to start working under that name to respond to help first responders in disasters.
And will you still remain president? I know you just recently elected for the firefighter, what was it?
Southeastern Association of Fire Chiefs. Yes, I will remain president as long as I'm the chief.
And I know Taylor told me your next initiative would have been with mental health. Talk to me about, is that something that you still plan to do?
Oh, yes. We have submitted a grant request for mental health for firefighters and families. Initially, one of the very first in the country to be able to use. They're excited about it. Wait to hear what they do.
37 years is a very long time. Talk to me about your experience as a Biloxi firefighter and as a chief.
Well, as I said here tonight, I remember when I came in, I wrote on the tailboard. I heard of it. We got closed cabs up. So a lot has changed, but it's been a great. I've seen us go from hip boots and long coats to turnout gear that protects us from carcinogens. All these things that needed to happen, continue to need to happen. Now we're, like I say, cancer is a big issue in the fire service. We've addressed that head on. Biloxi Fire Department will continue to. And now mental health is rearing its ugly head. So we need to address that.
And what do you wish and hope for the Biloxi Fire Department?
I wish them every success. Like I said, I hope every member of the department gets to experience what I've been able to experience and enjoy it with the passion. I love every one of the guys and gals. I wish them well.
Anything else you want to say or add?
Thank you to my family.
Perfect. Thank you.
I don't want to turn around backwards, as long as I can turn around and do that. Okay, that's good. That's good. Thanks, Nikki.
It had been good.
Subdivision, probably the three estimate. What is it? Right by the house.
I think there's a whole box in there. And every once in a while, I see somebody in there on my cameras going in there and changing them. Yeah. So I wonder if it's, Harold Wyndham maybe. I wish there was. Jerry, I know you don't want to hear this, but them ramps are getting worse and worse. No bumper boards left. The ramp at Little Park, straight concrete. Well, they awarded the contract to more and there's no money in the budget for it, so it's probably not gonna happen until next year. I was almost tempted to go and get some tires and decorating myself with some tires. Yeah. Yeah. They'll probably build one on down on they'll probably build the one on the beach before they fix that one. Yeah. I don't know what the plan is for out there, but it'd be nice if they had built some finger piers. Yeah. Yeah. And all that wetlands in there could be trimmed down a little bit, you know, so you can maybe make some more parking. Greg Eleuter's calling me. I don't know. Can't answer my phone right now. I'll call you back. That's what I said. He probably saw me on the thing, he was asking me why they were in executive. Uh-oh.
I need a motion and a second that the council conclude the executive session and reconvene as an open meeting.
So moved. Second.
I have a first by Mr. Glavin, a second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? All opposed? 7-0.
They want to note, Nathan, that no action.
Yeah, and no action was taken. We will now move to our policy agenda, Resolution A.
Resolution to appoint a president of the Biloxi City Council.
We have a first by Mr. Guines, a second by Mr. Lawrence. All in favor, or any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. We will now. Congratulations, sir.
There's no crown that goes with this?
We'll get you that.
A scepter?
Burger King. Here, I'll get you.
Thank you. And I thank the council for their vote. Thank you. That brings us to item B on the agenda. If the clerk will read item B, please.
Resolution to appoint a vice president to the Biloxi City Council.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make it.
Motion by Mr. Barrett. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Guines. Any discussion? And we're speaking for vice president would be Mr. Glavin, to my right, okay? No, there being no discussion, all in favor? 7-0 vote, thank you. That brings us to item C. If the clerk would read that item, please.
Resolution deny request for zoning map amendment to authorize a change in zoning from its current RS10 low-density single-family residential to limited business for property located at 13160 Old Mill Market Road.
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion by Mr. Barrett. Is there a second?
Second. So, Mr. Creel, on this, will you explain just exactly what we're trying to do here?
Okay. There was mention of a bed and breakfast. And there was nothing on the application to address a bed and breakfast application. Okay. The application that we received was a request for short-term rental. They're asking for a zoning change to LB, and I'm not sure who recommended that they try and ask for LB zoning, but LB is certainly not appropriate for the middle of a residential neighborhood. I was not at the Planning Commission meeting when this was heard, or I would have reminded the Planning Commission that they have the right to reduce that request from LB to RM20. You know, as I've told you many times, whenever you're seeking a zoning change for a specific purpose, you always ask for the least intensive zoning necessary to accomplish the purpose. And in this case, they're looking for short-term rental. The least necessary zoning would have been RM20. So that's what we would have recommended to the Planning Commission. This is a piece of property that's a little over 2 acres in size. It's located, and I actually had a drawing put on here so I could kind of show you where we're talking about. This is the, well, my laser's not showing up on the thing. If you can see the lot in the center that's surrounded by blue, that's the piece of property that we're talking about. It's right in the area where Old Mill Market Road comes south and then becomes River Court or whatever. Okay. The property, my understanding is the property at one time was owned by 3 doors down the singing group. And what's being requested is short-term rental for the property. They currently have 7 bedrooms there, which would require 7 parking spaces. And they have a 5-car garage that's already existing there. So, and I'm sure they have room for 2 more parking spaces, but that's the basis of this request.
So on this, C and D go together. What do we need to do to amend it? We need to make an amendment and Or do we have to have
No,
a public hearing?
actually what you would do is you would vote to deny the planning commission's recommendation.
Okay.
And then you would make a motion that the zoning request be reduced from LB to RM20.
And we vote on that today?
It's up to you. Yes, sir, you can.
All right, so do we, now on C and D, we have two separate ones, and they're both the same property.
C is for the zoning change. The D is for conditional use.
Okay, so we wouldn't need D.
Yes, you would.
Okay.
Yes, you'd need both of them.
Okay, so how do I need to word this? I want to make, okay, so we need to vote on this now, right?
You'll be voting, the planning commission voted to recommend denying their request.
Okay.
So what you would do is vote on that particular issue, and then we would get to the conditional, you'd make a recommendation that the zoning be reduced from the LB request to the RM20 request.
So we would do that on D?
That right. No, you would do that on C.
Okay.
You've got to deal with the zoning change request first.
Let me ask, your motion is to do what, Mr. Barrett?
So I'm
approve, deny?
making a motion to deny the request, and then once we do that, I want to make a motion to reduce the zoning to
RM20.
RM20.
So that's the amendment.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll get to that in a moment. Let's do that. Let's see if there's more discussion on this. Anybody else have questions on this particular item? Or no?
No more.
I have a question, Mr. Creel. My understanding is this property is on a peninsula?
It's right on the river. It's right on the Biloxi River.
Right.
Right in the intersection. You can see the loop that comes around there, but it does front the river.
And all of that property, that would be that? Okay, I have no idea what we're looking at. No, I see that. I want to see it up here, though.
You can see in the lower part of the screen. Maybe we can adjust it to get it up some. The property in question is this piece of property right here.
Okay.
It's actually on the Biloxi River, right here it faces. It's right where Old Walmart Road turns and becomes a river.
Right.
Now, the one letter of opposition that we received, the road where this turns, makes a loop around, it makes a.
Right. Is it possible to center that image so what we're talking about is in the center of the screen? And really, my question is, the surrounding properties, are they all residential?
They're also RS.
So the entire neighborhood is RS10?
Yes.
Would that be a fair description? And this is roughly in the middle?
Go back like you went.
This is the property.
Okay.
JJ.
All of those properties have large land around them. It's not
Right.
like a small
Right,
subdivision.
but it's all residential?
Correct.
Okay.
The letter of opposition came from this piece of property here, which is around the loop. I don't know if you can see it, but
Feeling this.
Riverland loops around. This is the property. Riverland loops around, comes around like this.
Mhm.
And this piece of property is facing Riverland on this side. Therefore, letter of opposition.
Okay. All right. So, and all of that area that we're looking at is residential?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or discussion on this item? There's a motion and a second to deny. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for the question. All in favor of denying the application for this rezoning? It's a 7-0 vote.
Now we make an amendment to request that the zoning be reduced to RM20.
RM20, yes.
And so I make that motion, need a second, then we vote on it?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
I'll second that.
All right, so there's a motion by Mr. Barrett, there's a second by Mr. Deming. And this is to reduce the zoning to RM
20.
20. All right, any discussion on that?
I'd like to ask a couple questions. I mean, we always stood up here, all of us, stood for neighborhoods. Can you hear now? You hear now?
It's better.
You know, this is strictly a residential neighborhood. And we changed the zone to something that nobody brought up but us. To me, it's not the right thing to do. You know, I know you had to deny the first one, but the second one, come in and we just start changing zones ourselves. They didn't request that. Nobody requested that at the meeting. The lawyer didn't request that. The applicants didn't request that. So we just doing this ourselves to say it's going to be short-term rental?
Yes, sir. You don't have the right to increase the intensity of a
I understand
request.
all that, Jerry. We're not talking about that. We're taking a residential neighborhood that we all vote against short-term rentals in and turning it into RM 20 so we can have short-term rentals. That's not the right process to do that, to me. Let these people come back and bring it back. They can bring anything they want back. We just denied one thing. And I know, just change whatever they want. But at least go through the right setup to get it done, to the planning commission. They recommend denying what you had on the table. Now you change what's on the table. So, I mean, I don't see how you can do that, honestly. You better get some legal advice here.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? I have a thought. As I recall, and you said you were not present at this planning commission meeting.
No, sir.
I don't think I was there. And originally, as I recall, Dr. Rossetti he used bed and breakfast and short-term rental interchangeably. I don't think that was his intent. I think it was just generic, but I think what he wanted to do was use it as a short-term rental. And my concern is, given the fact that that's the request for the RM 20 zone in the middle of a residential section, one concern is this spot zoning or not? Here you are in the middle of a residential area, and you want to change the zoning to multifamily residential, RM 20, and solely for the purpose of a short-term rental. And as I understood earlier during citizens' comments, scratch that. And that being the case, I take Mr. Lawrence's point, and that's been my concern all along. So here we have a residential area that the property owner bought the property. What he really wants to do is short-term rentals, and this will permit him to do that in the middle of a residential area. There were a lot of concerns about events that were held on this property. I kind of think it's water under the bridge, but they had events. I think it was, I don't know whether it was birthdays, graduation parties, small weddings, whatever. There was some agreement or disagreement about that, but and then something about maybe a landscaper or a manager on site who might be leasing the property unknown to the property owner. That was unclear. All of this, I think, is in the transcript. But I said all that to say this. I share Mr. Lawrence's concern. That has bothered me all along. As I think if you look at my record, you'll see that this, as soon as you ask for an RM 20 or 30, you know this short-term rental is coming right behind it. So this is a backdoor entry, my words, nobody else's, of getting short-term rentals in the middle of a residential area, and I can't support it based on that. Mr. Glavin.
So, Director, if we change the zoning, it's still conditional use? They have to go back to the Planning Commission, or they automatically get it if we change the zoning?
You're going to vote on the conditional use next. It's on the agenda. You can reduce the zoning request like you've suggested, and then go ahead and continue to vote on the conditional use today so that both would be heard and decided today. With the question of spot zoning, our previous ordinance, the one that was in effect before this, actually spelled out spot zoning, and anything that was above 2 acres, any request that came in for a zoning change 2 acres or more was not considered spot zoning.
As I understand it, this is a lot more than 2 acres, right?
It's 2.12.
Okay.
So all the properties surrounding this property, this isn't a residential neighborhood. These are very large lots. Some of these lots are probably 5, 10 acres. On these, there's probably on all of Riverland Drive, there's probably not more than 10 to 15 homes on that, and that's a pretty long road. It's very, very big properties. It's not, 20 or 7,500 square foot lots or anything like that. It's acreage. Some of them across the street is a literal farm. Across the street from this property, it's a farm. So it's not your typical neighborhood.
But it's listed as a residential neighborhood. Correct? Okay, that's what it's listed as. So that's what I was telling you. And normally you only take up one step. From 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000. Look, we just creating 20, or in 20.
Did you say the 2 acres was in the previous land development ordinance, but it?
Development ordinance, as long as it was at least 2 acres in size, it was not considered spot zone.
Right, that was the previous LDO, but that's not the current LDO?
This one just doesn't call it out. For some reason, it didn't call it out when it was put together.
Okay, so that 2 acres was a guide in the past, more or less, but it's no longer a guide?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes. Is there any other discussion on this question?
One other
Mr.
question.
Lawrence?
Y'all keep talking about bed and breakfast. That's not listed in here anywhere. Is it short-term rental or bed and breakfast?
Short-term rental.
So none do a bed and
Thing I
breakfast.
said was that the bed and breakfast was not attached to this application. Now, I think there was some confusion that maybe when this property came in from the county, when it was annexed in, that maybe they had an operation there of a bed and breakfast. I don't know. We couldn't find anything in our files about the approval of a bed and breakfast on this piece of property.
So bed and breakfast should never been mentioned, period.
Yes, sir, and actually, if you read the minutes, he was asked by the planning commission specifically, do you intend to do a bed and breakfast here? And he said, not at this time.
Right, he really wanted to keep his options open. I think the intent was a short-term rental, maybe a bed and breakfast, maybe not, maybe kind of iffy on all of that, and I spoke with him afterwards. Any other comments on this? If not, we'll call for the question. All right, the motion is to reduce the zoning request to an RM20 made by Mr. Barrett and seconded by Mr. Deming. All in favor? All against? It's a 5-2 vote in favor for the clerk. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, 4D. If the clerk would read that, please.
Resolution denying a request for conditional use to authorize short-term rental for property at 13160 Old Market Road.
I'll entertain a motion.
I want to make a motion to approve the request.
Motion by Mr. Barrett, second by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion? Any comments?
One question. Oh, let's take, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rob.
Which resolution are we on? I'm sorry.
4D,
So
conditional use.
you made a motion to
Approve condition, the request.
to approve so the request is for denial, so you're making a motion to deny the denial.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
I have to make myself notes so I can explain this later to myself. Okay. Mr. Lawrence?
On E, as we dealing with, I hope this is not marshland like it says it is.
We're still on D right now, Mr.
We're
Lawrence.
on D.
I thought we already voted on D.
No.
C.
We voted on 4C.
Okay, go ahead.
We're voting on 4D. That's to deny the denial, in effect, approve a conditional use
Yes, sir.
for this parcel. Any other discussion or questions? We'll call for the question. All in favor? All opposed? It's approved by a 5-2 vote for the clerk. That brings us to item 4E. If the clerk would read that item, please.
Resolution to grant preliminary subdivision plat approval for 16-lot residential subdivision submitted as the reserve at Marsh Island.
All right, I'll entertain a motion on 4E. Is a motion by Mr. Deming,
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Glavin. Discussion? Mr. Deming, any discussion, comments?
No discussion.
Mr. Glavin?
I have none.
Anybody else?
The only question I was gonna ask about E, enough, is, I hope it's not really marshland, or that's just the name of the place.
Marsh Island.
Marsh Island, yeah.
Come on, Jerry, wake up here with that, let's get on it.
I'm right on it.
All right.
No, this does not involve marshland. There is some marshland along the border, but it's not a part of the subdivision plat, the preliminary plat that's coming to you today.
We're not gonna have any problem with flooding. We seem to have a lot of flooding problems everywhere. So flooding not be a problem.
Well, this is a preliminary plat. It was looked at by the engineering department as it went through the DRC, and they were satisfied that everything was, met their standards. So
This is currently or is or was a trailer park where you turn off onto Causeway Park, that road, the old Pops Fair, where the old Pops
That's correct.
Causeway is.
Yes, sir.
And just before you make the turn and go over the little fishing bridge out to Ewell's Place or whatever, there's a road on the right, that's Barrett Road.
Barrett Road, that's correct.
And that trailer park there basically is disappearing or will disappear, and these are the lots that will be there.
That's correct. It'll be a single-family subdivision with 16 lots.
Okay, and then the next item deals with a public right-of-way. There's part of a road that runs through that development. That's not centered in the right-of-way, but we'll get to that next.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions on 4E?
But Barrett Road, that's not part of the swamp, is it?
That's all it was, just checking.
Never been down that
All
way.
right, go ahead.
Didn't we tell you this was a tough room to work? Okay, any other comments or questions on 4E? Call for the question. All in favor? All opposed? 7-0 vote for the clerk. Thank you. That brings us to item 4F. If the clerk would read that, please.
Resolution granting vacation of an improved public right-of-way identified as Barrett Road.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deming and a second by Mr. Glavin. Mr. Deming, any comments or questions? Mr. Glavin?
Hey, anytime we can put in a road and improve it, I'm all for it.
Okay. Anybody else have questions, comments? All right, call for the question. All in favor? All opposed? 7-0 vote for the clerk. Thank you. That brings us to item 4G. If the clerk would read that resolution, please.
Resolution to grant preliminary subdivision plat approval for a 208 lot residential subdivision known as the Preserve at Parker Creek subdivision.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for discussion.
There's a motion by Mr. Barrett. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Mr. Barrett, comment or questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. So on the Shriners Boulevard side, if I understand correctly, the shaded area that borders Shriners is going to be left as is. I mean, at some point, someone may come in and put businesses there. But at this point, that's going to be left. So what is the distance, do you know? Is there someone here from?
Marcus Thomas is here.
Okay.
This property was owned by one owner, all of it.
Yes.
What's happening is that the owners are selling the property that's going to be used for residential to Elliott Homes to develop, but they're retaining the property that runs along Shriners Boulevard, which is already zoned.
Now, do you know the distance, the depth of that property from Shriners Road that's being retained? Do you know the depth of that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thomas, if you would, come up to the mic and just identify yourself for the clerk, and thank you, sir.
Sorry, Jerry. Marcus Thomas, and I represent the owners of the, not Elliott Homes, but the owners of the commercial and the property before. The shaded area is 550 feet, plus there's a creek that goes through there, which makes it about 1,100 feet from Shriners to the...
To where your property starts.
Where the lot will start.
So 1,000 foot from the road, the first lot wouldn't start. So in essence, because of where it's located on the hill, this subdivision won't even be seen from Shriners, correct?
Won't even see it.
Okay, the next question I have is the entrance. I know that I remember at the planning commission, there's some type of bridge or something that has to be put in over a creek.
Yes.
And where is that going in at? I'm looking at the map here, and maybe,
It's about midways,
okay, I'm gonna scroll down. I'm looking at a different map than you.
right there.
Okay, all right, let me find that map. I was looking at that grayed out map. Sorry.
Excellent job, Mr. Creel, by the way. You could be the next Vanna White.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so this is Shriners here, okay. Okay, so that would be the entrance, and that would just run through, so, okay, so that's running through that 1,000 feet or whatever.
Plus feet, yeah.
Okay, to cross that creek. Now, my next question is, and the only real concern I have about this subdivision is the backside, that's bordering, the only border that you have with actual residents is on the Jim Bird side. So between the back of those residents, and some of that's very wet, and so that's another concern that I have on that side of the property. On that side, what kind of buffer area is being left between those properties and where you're starting to build? Okay.
Nathan, I believe it's about 150 feet from that road that accesses out the back right there.
So this road that accesses out the back that I see, that's going to be a gated road, correct? That's going to be a Knox box road, basically, correct? Yes. Okay. And that's going to come in on the back corner of that property. Now, will the cutting of that road expose those properties to the road? Do we know that? Because a lot of these, the reason I'm asking, because a lot of these properties are wooded areas, and if we come in and cut it all out and expose people, do you see what I'm asking?
Yes. Their part of the road that the developer's going to be putting in runs from here to here. That's where their property ends, right here.
Is that other road already in existence?
Yes, this is Jim Bird Road, and you know it comes down to right here. All they're going to do is extend it from the property line on into their subdivision
That's
development.
actually, Jim Bird doesn't make a right turn, it makes a left turn.
No, this is Jim Bird over here.
Yes, so what is that
north and
road
south.
coming off of Jim Bird? That's a Road C? So that's a, so that's already in existence? Okay, never mind. All right, and then my next question is, on these properties, is there going to be a fence put on the backside of these properties that are facing the residents that are already in place? And it looks like it's only about, I would guess, maybe 10 to 15 homes.
It's very few, and Elliott Holmes said, it would be up to the homeowner, but as you know, everybody puts privacy fence up these days.
Yeah, I would like to make that a stipulation.
Yes.
I would like to add that in, that a privacy fence is put up along the back of the properties that are facing existing properties. I would like to add that in as a stipulation.
We could make that a part of the plat.
I'd like to amend the plat to make that a approval. Other than that, I have no objection. Just make sure that we do a good job on the drainage, and that backside is a wet area, and I want to make sure that we protect that, not only y'all's investment but the property owners that are already there.
Sure.
But so I would ask that we put an amendment in. I'll make a motion to amend and add that fences are required by the builder on the properties that border existing homes.
We'll do that.
On that
We'll put the
backside.
language on there.
You need, Peter, we've got a motion. Do we need a second on that?
Yes.
As well? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Glavine. Any discussion on the privacy fences in the backyard for these properties? There being none, you ready for a vote, or were you, anybody else have comments?
To vote on the amendment.
Okay. All right, let's vote on the amendment first, to add the privacy fence. All in favor? That's a 7-0 vote. Now we'll look at the amended resolution to grant preliminary subdivision plat approval for the preserve at Parker Creek subdivision. All in favor?
But I'd like to ask a question, Jerry, before we go to, before you
Okay.
make your vote. We seem to have a lot of problems. Every time we do some of these subdivisions in Ward 7, they flood. Does this land flood now, Nathan?
There is a large area that it's a natural water flow at the bottom, like if you're on the south side of this land. So everything rolls to that. When we have a heavy rain, yes, but I mean, it's the power lines. So everything runs there. As far as actual properties that it will affect, the only ones that I had the concern is on that back side, and it's just a handful. But I went to the planning meeting, and it's going to be built to where the back sides of these lots, the water is running into the subdivision, into the draining, so the water won't be running off onto these homeowners. So it will probably actually help what the issues that is on the few homeowners that do border this. It's very few that border this entire subdivision. Most of it is just wooded area around it, and all the water naturally flows to that creek and to the power lines that are just south of it.
When the creek overflows, it flood the land?
No, sir. You would have to see it to the water, I guess where the power lines run, the land falls maybe 30, 40 foot. So we would have to have, like Noah's flood to flood that out.
The reason I brought this up is because of you. You don't want to say yet no, because you always say you're having so much trouble with these subdivisions, and there's more and more flooding in your ward. Now, you keep dating that, so I'm telling you, just be careful when you pass these things, because they don't come back on you, because you don't want to bring it up about the flooding out there.
Yes,
But,
sir.
I mean, that's why I asked if this land flood.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Okay, we'll call for the question. All in favor? That's a 7-0 vote for the clerk. Thank you. That brings us to item H. If the clerk would read that resolution, please.
Resolution to grant conditional use approval to authorize short-term rentals within 3 separate units located within the Majestic Oaks RV Resort.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for a public hearing.
Motion by Ms. Newman, second by Mr. Guines. Discussion or comments? Ms. Newman?
No.
Mr. Guines?
Yeah, I think it'll give us time to look it all over and to hear both sides. Thank you.
He said it'll give us time to think it over and hear both sides.
Okay.
To have a public hearing.
Oh.
I called for a public hearing.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, so it's a motion. All right, so your motion is for a public hearing.
Correct.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, you didn't hear me?
You didn't hear me either.
No.
so.
You're getting old, Dr. Tisdale.
All right, so we've got a motion for a public hearing by Ms. Newman, a second by Mr. Guines. Any comments, concerns? Vote on the public hearing then. All in favor? All opposed? All right, we've got to set the date for that public hearing. And I know we have some advertising requirements, correct? And I'm thinking, I don't know how many, Peter, you have to run, what, 3 advertisements during a tour? So could we say maybe mid-August, our second meeting date in August, Carrie? August 17th, so we could shoot for a public hearing on August 17th. Does that give us enough time to meet the publishing requirements?
Today.
Okay. August 17th. And I think we hold those at the beginning of the council meetings, as I recall. Okay, so on item H, we've set a public hearing scheduled for Tuesday, August 17th. And our council meeting begins at 1:30, so that's when we'll set the time for that hearing. Okay? All right, well, good. We're good. That brings us to item I, The clerk would read that resolution, please.
Resolution granting conditional use approval to authorize short-term rental located at 515 Howard Avenue.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Mr. Lawrence and a second by Mr. Guines. Mr. Lawrence, comment?
Yeah, this actually sits in the neighborhood where you can have short-term rentals. So we've proven something that we keep pushing to do it in the right spot. This is in the right spot at 515 Howard Avenue. Neighborhood business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Guines, comment?
Amen.
Got an amen. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of the resolution as presented? It's a 7-0 vote for the clerk. Thank you. That brings us to item J. If the clerk would read that resolution, please.
Resolution granting minor subdivision final plat approval for 1070 Campbell Drive.
Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Mr. Glavin, is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Mr. Barrett. Mr. Glavin?
Yeah, this is a large parcel of land that's it's vacant land since Katrina. I know the owner, Les Barnett. He's trying to subdivide it, of course, into 3 lots so that we can build some or develop it further, possibly single-family homes. So it's a no-brainer. It's right on the river. It's a beautiful piece of property, and there's residential that on either side, or at least to the north of, or to the south of it.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Barrett, question or comment? None. Any other questions or comments on this resolution? All right, all in favor? That's a 7-0 vote for the clerk.
Resolution appointing Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Biloxi.
Yes, I would entertain a motion at this point, and Peter, if you would, be sure I'm doing this properly, to consolidate, if you will, items K, L, M, N, O, P, and Q, that we would include those in one resolution, that these directors would serve in their position, and that we, until we table this and take it up at our next council meeting,
July
which would
20th.
be July 20th.
I'll second it.
All right, so we need a motion there. Will somebody make
I'll
that
make the motion.
All right, so the motion is by Mr. Glavin. and-
Second.
All right. Okey-doke. Any discussion, comments? All in favor? That's a 7-0 vote. Thank you. All right. Carrie, you got all that, right?
We tabled all of those.
Table all those for 2 weeks, July 20th, and wrap them up in one resolution. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Guy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Barrett. And Mr. Barrett, it's your lucky day. We'll start on your end. If there are any items on the consent agenda?
I have none.
There are none. Mr. Glavin?
I have none.
You have none, okay. I would like it noted that I'm recusing myself on item U, W, double U. Could be very confusing. Thank you.
Are you
Mr.
sure?
Deming, any questions, comments?
No.
Okay. Mr. Guines?
None.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, I have a problem with quite a few of them,
Okay.
and I'll explain it to you, and I've talked to the mayor about this. Our court system is in total disarray, and I'm not for appointing everybody back unless we make some big changes and this court system do some good. The city of Biloxi spent $1.5 million and getting nothing back for it. So either we need to sit down with somebody, you have a man that's a businessman, David Leckage, running this thing, and maybe we need to run it as a business. Because what we're doing right now is just not working. We're not putting anybody in jail, we're not fining anybody, we're not collecting any money, and nothing working in this court system. So it's time for us to step up and change this. This is almost as bad as MGM Park. when you can't get any money out of it. So it means that I'm not for appointing them back until we do something that shows some positive change for the city of Biloxi.
Well, let me comment on that.
Sure.
You know, this is our recommendations, and we know the circumstances about how we can go forward. We avoided some litigation a number of years ago. We, increased the presence of the judicial part of the deal. And there's a lot of factors that, I'm happy to discuss in detail. We are making progress, though, if you're just going to measure fines, but you just don't measure fines, especially today, especially, the ability to be positive in people paying attention and you mentioned, the $1.5 million is what it costs to run, but it's also, a complex deal. And I, of course, agree, we can do a lot of this stuff better. Every department, we can do better. I'm committed to do it better. I just, I'm not respectfully disagreeing. These are the folks that we need to do in order to make it better. And that's my position.
Well, so my problem is we're not doing any changes. We're not showing any changes. We're not showing any improvement. So we do the same thing we're doing again.
No, we're not doing the same thing. We're actually, investigating.
Place.
Well, we're happy to talk to you about what we're going to do and what we have plans to do as far as third party and some of these other collections. And Peter, you can comment on where we are.
Actually, the collection of fines has increased this year at this time compared to last year. And part of that is due in part to a new collection agency we passed a resolution on 6 months ago. Those are coming online. There is the tax refund deferral program that's now coming online, but we put all those mechanisms into place 6 months ago, and we are seeing an increase in collections. We've also seen an increase in collections in community court, where fines were never assessed, and now they are being assessed. And the judges we have, we reduced both of those to part-time positions during COVID, and they're remaining in part-time positions at less salaries. So we basically have two judges for the cost of what one judge was receiving last year. So we have continuously made adjustments and adapted to the situation, and we're going to continue to. And our collections, I expect, will be going up. We're not going to go back to $1.5 million when we were putting everybody in jail. We're not going to get there. We're not going to get there in 2 years. But we're increasing from, I think we were down at a low of about 350,000 to 400 to 500, and but we're making improvements in those regards.
Yeah, I'm just, you have to show me more than just talking about it. We have to prove it and show where it's at. That's actually doing some good. And I really hadn't seen much change in the last 3 years over this thing, other than going down.
If you're just measuring fines, we can show you those dollars because they've been increasing and they will meet a little bit better against our projections. One thing that it will impact this is the sheriff has indicated that they had no room, especially with COVID and some of these other things that were kind of impacted where we could be, but it just has increased his capacity for us to put folks, where they need to be. And there's a lot of, Chief will kind of tell me that there's a lot of folks that need to be in jail. We just don't have a place to put them.
Excuse me, Chief, if somebody had handed you a mic, just so the folks at home don't have to lip read. Thank you, sir.
I said we've been restricted on how many people we could incarcerate. The sheriff has recently increased that for us, and hopefully he'll increase that again.
Right.
A lot of it had to do with COVID, yes, sir.
And there will be a direct relationship to how many folks versus the people who choose to pay fines.
That's right.
I mean, this is extremely important what we're doing here.
Yes.
For the city of Biloxi, the citizens of Biloxi. Something that they need to see why we're spending much money and not collecting any money.
No, we are. Let me correct you. We are collecting more money than Peter said, and we can show you that progress, and we can show you where we'll be next year.
But anyway, still, when you put out $1.5 million, this is not the money maker. This is to hope you break even. That's all you want to do with this thing. You know, just
No,
want to be evil.
it's to administer justice, and we've been, faced with some extraordinary things since 2016, when I came in some of those things we had to do. We had 2 judges, and plus, Peter can elaborate, but that threw, a bunch of money where we just happened to, get in a situation with the ACLU. We worked through that, and we're still trying to work through that, and be more successful.
Well, you want the court system itself to work, the process to work, to make sure it actually stands for what it's supposed to represent. And I mean, that's the key. And I just don't like the way it's set up. I don't like the way it's going. Been around here too long.
Any other items, Mr. Lawrence?
That's probably enough.
Okay, we're good? We're good then?
Yeah, I'm just gonna vote against all of them when it comes up.
Okay. All right, so everybody's had an opportunity. We'll vote on the consent agenda at this time, and then I'll come around for exceptions so we can note those. All in favor of the consent agenda as presented? Is that a 7-0 vote? Okay, that's a 7-0 vote. And we'll come around for exceptions. Mr. Lawrence?
MNOPQR.
MNOPQR.
You got those down? And then UUVV and WW. It's all the court system thing. Everybody involved in it.
Yeah, I've got them for you, Carrie. Those are items M, N, O, P, Q, R, UU, VV, WW. Those are all no's for Mr. Lawrence. Any other exceptions, Mr. Guines, or any more, George?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Guines, any?
None.
Dixie, any? Robert? Well, thank you. Mr. Glavin?
I have none.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
No exception.
All right, I'm recused on item UU. Thank you. All right, all duly noted. That brings us to code enforcement hearings, part 2 of the Jerry Creel Hour. All right, we'll open the first hearing. Geraldine F. Blessy, care of Stanton Fountain, 250 Lee Street. Is there anybody here to speak on this matter?
I did speak to Mr. Blessy on this, and he sent me an email. He said that he has no control over this property, that it's my understanding, I'll read it to you if you want me to. It's my understanding that my mother's estate has abandoned any claim to this property. The People's Bank is the executor of my mother's estate, and Henry Dick is the attorney for the executor. I have no control over the estate and no control over the property. It's my understanding that a title search of the land records for the property revealed that it never actually passed from the prior owners down to my mother and her siblings. In any event, I have no authority to take any action with regard to the property. I appreciate your courtesy in notifying me of the situation. Please do proceed with code enforcement as you would in any other case.
Okay. All right. So this hearing is closed then. It's still in violation, obviously.
Still in violation, yes, sir.
This hearing is closed. That brings us to the next hearing.
Jose Antonio Malaga Gomez, 14189 Dundee Wood Road. This property is still in violation.
Okay. All right, is there anyone here to speak on this matter? 14189 Dundee Wood Road.
Yes, sir.
This hearing is closed. That brings us to hearing item C.
Raquel L. Greathouse, 240 Benaki Avenue. This property is still in violation. They called this afternoon and said that they had made a lot of progress on it. So I sent Tim Sapola out to look at it, and they have made a lot of progress on it. I would ask for 30 days.
So we'll grant that. 30-day extension.
All right, so there's a motion for 30 days by Mr. Lawrence and a second by Mr. Guines. All in favor? Thank you. That's a 7-0 vote for a 30-day extension.
Item D, Cheryl McEwen, 181 Gardenia Street. This property is still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on this matter, 181 Gardenia Street?
Yep.
Yes, sir. If you'd come up to the microphone and just state your name for the clerk so she can get that down, and just tell us your name and then.
Ryan McEwen.
All right, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Can you give us an update on the property or what comments you'd like to make on this matter?
There's been, has been significant progress, is the word. I've been to this code office with my renter on this place, and we've been working feverishly to clean it all up, and I have seen the place in way worse shape. It's been in violation before, and we've went through the process, and my mind is it looks tremendous around there, but as
how old are these?
This that I'm looking at is not, none of that is there at this point. And
How old are these pictures, Mr. Creel?
this is today. No,
Gotcha.
this is over this little cubby hole he's got fenced off that he's trying to stash it all in, and I've been on his butt about trying to get rid of it. The rest of the yard all looks pretty good, as you can see from the street. I asked for another 30 days, you know. Me working all the time, and I'm coming by here on my renters behind about cleaning it all up.
Okay, Mr. Deming has a question, I believe.
Go ahead.
Mr. Creel, he said he'd ask for another 30 days. Has there been an extension granted on this application yet? Yeah, well, he used the term another, so I didn't know if we had previously granted 30 days prior to right now.
That I'm aware of.
What I would point out is that in order for it to come to the council, it's already been through community court. So it's been a very large period of time up to this point. Only when we get it resolved, we bring it to the city council.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Creel. He granted numerous people in here 30 days. If he's willing to work with his renter, if you're willing to work with your renter to get this resolved within 30 days, I will make a motion to grant you a 30-day extension.
Thank you, sir.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Deming, a second by Mr. Guines. Any discussion? All in favor of a 30-day extension? All opposed? That's a 6-1 vote. But Mr.
McEwen,
you have 30 days to clean it up, and we'll get some sort of report from Mr. Creel in those 30 days. Good luck. Godspeed.
I have to plan on being
Well, you don't have to be, but it certainly helps if you're here in case there are any issues that come up.
I think the procedure, if you get it all cleaned up, code enforcement will wipe it off.
That's
so
correct.
All you got to do is get it done. If you get it done before 30 days, report it back to community development.
That's correct.
Okay? Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, sir. But
as they always say, take pictures.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. So you have 30 days. Appreciate that. All right, Mr. Creel, item E.
Item E, Frank Masita, 280 Rodenberg Avenue. That case has been resolved. Item F, Cynthia White, 57 Elm Avenue, this property is still in violation.
All right, and we have someone here to speak on this matter.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Parks.
My name is George Parks, and Ms. White had asked, they said they're working on getting it clean, and said if you can give 30 more days, they would have it done.
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so Mr. Lawrence made a motion for 30 days. And Mr. Guines seconded that. Any discussion? All in favor? That's a 7-0 vote. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Creel. All right, that brings us to the routine agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Lawrence, second by Mr. Guines. Mr. Lawrence.
How's our pipeline this week?
So on June 28th, we received 1.962 million, and currently we have 2.352 million coming from MEMA. It's in step 4 of 5, so that typically means we will receive that in 10 to 15 days.
Are we still above water?
Sir?
I said we're still above water.
Yes, sir.
You're doing well. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Guines, anything? On the routine agenda, any questions on the routine agenda? Questions or comments, any of the other council members? Okay.
Doc, I don't know if this is coincidence, but it seems like every time you're president, we're in here a longer time than normal. So
Well,
will you try to speed it up a little bit?
You're blessed. If y'all would speak quicker. Thank you. All right, all in favor of the routine agenda as presented? It's a 7-0 vote. I'll entertain a motion for recess.
Moved.
So moved by Mr. Deming. Is there a second?
Move it.
By Mr. Lawrence. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Everybody drive carefully. Thank you very much.